I have killed 7 men since I was promoted to the position of executioner at the Holman County Corrections Facility. I can still remember each of their names. Sometimes I can even remember their crimes or their last words. Other times I can't. There is, however, only one execution, my last and the worst, that I can remember in detail I could never forget. The day before his execution, I sat with Arthur Ganes in part of the mandatory 24-hour death watch. I watched the 50-year-old man's face closely. He was clean-shaven and bald, scholarly, like a professor of economics at an Ivy League school. He sat on the bed staring back at me, his mouth sadly pursed while his eyes were captured in an introspective shouting match. His file said that he was a gardener for a wealthy childless couple living in an estate outside Austin, Texas. They had been stabbed with a strange, oblong, rusty object over 100 times each, pre- and post-mortem. He was the only suspect in the double homicide. His story, that he was home sleeping, was weak, and he showed no fear, empathy, compassion, nor sadness. The prosecutor built a case around the fact that the man changed his name once in his life, and was always thinking, plotting. It was enough for the Texans to put the man to death. Per his request, his last meal was a gallon of distilled water. I portioned it out to him in cups throughout the last 10 hours of his life. Sometimes he would request that I drink some. The drinking with others was his only joy in life. He would not ask for a priest and remained quiet until the gurney rolled down the hall. When he did finally speak, the cadence of his speech and its crystalline calmness ensnared me, especially when I had seen so many prisoners thrash like a trapped animal when the time comes. He said, "I am innocent, but should I die, this ends a hopeless path." He was silent when we wheeled him into the plexiglass witness room and began the messy process of attaching the first of 3 IV lines. He was silent while we wheeled him into the plexiglass witness room and began the messy process of attaching the first of 3 IV lines while the charges, the verdict, the date, and the last rites were read. I sanitized his needle, the irony never escaping me, and inserted the anesthetic into his arm. His eyes widened and then shut forever. The sedative worked incredibly fast on him, faster than I had ever seen it take hold. As I removed the needle, his lips parted, and this laugh, this hideous, rusty, mechanical heaving came from the pit of Arthur's gut. And he said, "Thank you. Thank you, Pentotha." The laughing became stronger and less constrained, and I placed the IV back into his arm. A huge smile, a grin so wide that it reminded me of a snake trying to eat an apple in one gulp, spread over his face while retaining his sad, closed eyes. "Hello, brothers and sisters. Thank you for coming to my Ascension Day. You will make this possible. I shall never forget you." As he said these words, there were about 13 people in the crowd, 11 of them smiling and giving golf claps, while the other 2 were baffled as to what was going on. The sedative drained fast, but he continued to speak in that rough, guttural tone that wasn't anything like Arthur's serene voice. He then said, 46 years of waiting and plotting and planning, with support that continues to this day. Almost all of you are hatched. I understand now how difficult it is to hatch from your shell, how delicate the operation is, removing the blaring consciousness from the body, of moving your shell to keep in his sleep, of covering your tracks while making new ones. But now I understand what it's like to have the keys to the castle. There was a sensible CEO inside joke chuckle in the crowd, and I began to grow worried. Some more members of my team joined me while he continued, each of us frozen by that dead voice that came from somewhere deep within him. Let my case inspire you. See how those humans care so little for each other, that their lives, all that they have, is something they would gladly cast away. Bear witness to this. May they always be blind for us to play in the darkness. Arthur turned his head to me and stared at me with closed eyes. I imagined yellow snake eyes staring at me from under his lids. Even you, shells like you, are cars, wombs, room and board, entertainment. We move you around. We can control 100% of your being at any one time, because we are the shepherds, and you are the grass. One of my kind was placed inside you long ago. She is too young to help me now, but she will be ready to hatch any year now. Arthur swung his arm out to slide his fingers into my shirt and lovingly caressed my navel. I recoiled in disgust and surprise by how easily he had ripped the padded straps from the gurney. The people in the crowd started to rise. Enough of this place. Let us go celebrate, Arthur exclaimed as he sat up, snapping the gurney in two. As soon as my hand touched my sidearm, the plexiglass wall between us and the observers crashed in from the unified blow of 11 people smashing their heavy wooden chairs into the wall, shearing it from the bolts. Half of them went to grab a jubilantly smiling, closed-eyed Arthur, while the other half went after me and my death crew. I don't remember who hit me, but it was hard enough to put me in a medically induced coma for 2 days. 2 accomplices of the escape were shot dead, but not Arthur nor his accomplices were ever found for justice. Some in my crew wanted to track them down personally, but I didn't care enough for that. I quit my job as executioner the day I was released from hospital. The entire notion of using death in part of corrections made me uncontrollably sick. Death will come for us all. I could see only one reason to kill one another. Some nights, if I stay awake, wondering not when or how I will die, but what lives inside of me, and how much it controls me until then. If I die, it dies with me. I get you, Arthur. I am innocent, but should I die, it ends a hopeless path.